Welcome back to EDH Deck Building. I'm your host Demo, and it's 10 more cards you should be putting in your Commander decks. I'm just basically going through almost every card, well, I guess every card in Commander that's legal. That's why these lists are in alphabetical order, and I'm just picking out the ones that I think are going to be, either they're cards that I think people should be using just because they're good, or they're cards that I think should be used in specific decks. So starting out with Coalition Flag, it's enchant creature you control. So you can put this on a creature you control and it will help save another creature you control, because if someone wants to swords it or something, they'll have to target your token or whatever. And, the creature is likely as good as dead, right? Next up, number 2, Coffin Queen. This is just a card that, again, I talk about Tempest Block a lot because that's when I started playing. And this is a card that I saw that I cracked in a pack. I just thought it was super cool. At the time, I didn't even realize it was a target creature card from a graveyard. I didn't even realize you could take something from someone else's graveyard. This is just a fantastic card. It really could go in almost any deck. In particular, it's good in a deck where you're milling. You're just going to be taking creature cards out of your opponent's graveyards and putting them directly into play under your control or your graveyard, either one. Just very versatile card and very usable in a lot of different decks. Next up, number 3, Compost. I talked about this a little bit when I was doing my combos with Painter's Servant, but, black is so ubiquitous in Commander that I really think, and I've seen a couple other people doing it, where they just put Compost in their deck, period. Just because there's so much black. The ability, whenever a black card is put into opponent's graveyard, draw. So, that's discard, they cast a spell, that's anything, right? All they have to do is cast Demonic Tutor and you draw a card, right? It's such a powerful effect. And if you have even just 2 opponents at the table playing black, the value is incredible. And again, it's another one of those cards that is sort of invisible. It's not really hurting anyone. It's not annoying anyone. It's not like Ristic Study where you're constantly asking people if they want to pay 1. It's just going to sit there and it's just going to draw you cards, and probably it's just going to go unnoticed. Just a great card. Coming in at number 4, Conch Horn. This is an interesting one. When Winota first came out, I put together a Winota deck because I really didn't think she was going to be that popular. Well, little did I know. And this is a card I grabbed because I thought it'll be really important for me to put my expensive humans that I want to cheat into play back into my deck or on top of my deck, right? And in Boros, there isn't a lot of cards, right? Basically, blue is fantastic at doing this. Like, it has those brainstorm type effects. Not a lot of other colors have the ability to take something from your hand and put it on top of your library. Scroll Rack is a card that does that. Conch Horn is an alternative to that. If you don't want to just rely on one card, it's like basically a one-shot Scroll Rack, right? You're going to sacrifice it, draw 2 cards, then put the card in your hand that you want on top of your library. So this is great in any deck, like Aminatu or Amareth, or any deck where you want to be putting stuff on top of your library rather than having it in your hand. Credit Voucher. Again, this is a card that if you don't want something in your hand and you want it in your library, this is great. Again, Winota, maybe you want to put this in so you can put those expensive humans back in your deck. It's also good if you're playing a deck that I've been thinking of making, a polymorph style deck where I only have a few really big creatures in my deck, and I'm going to polymorph and then put them directly into play. So if you have that style of deck, again, this is great for if you draw them, you can shuffle them back into your deck, or shuffle any card you want back into your deck that you want to like search out and put directly into play. But it's also great for just drawing cards, right? You're going to shuffle any number of cards from your hand into your library, then draw that many cards. This is essentially a wheel, right? If you want another wheel effect or a cheap wheel effect, if you have 7 cards in hand, say you're playing a Locust God deck, you can pay 2, shuffle your whole hand away, and then draw 7 cards, right? So you're basically wheeling for 2 mana. It's a really usable, versatile effect that I think a lot of more people should be playing. Curtain's Call, I don't know. I mean, this is in a commander set when I first saw it, I thought it was way too good. You know, in a normal 4-player game, you're paying 3 mana to destroy 2 creatures at instant speed. It's so good. I never see it. I try to put it in as many decks as I can. I never see this card. I don't get it. I mean, I've seen it maybe once played by another player. So maybe I'm just wrong. Maybe people are playing this, but if not, start playing it. Damping Engine coming in at number 7. This card is I know people look at this and go, "Oh, it's stacks." I mean, it's not really stacks. What it is, though, it's holding back the one guy who's doing the best, right? So if you have one guy, and basically this is what Commander is all about. You have 4 players, and when one guy's doing really good, how Commander works is you have one guy, or how it should work, is that you have one guy who's just going crazy. He gets his first turn Soul Ring and his Mana Crypt, and he's ramping like crazy. The other 3 players, to even things out, are going to gang up on that guy to keep him, they're going to use their removal on him and stuff, and to level out the playing field, as it were, right? This card sort of does that, right? A player who controls more permanents than each other player can't play lands or cast artifact, creature, enchantment spells. So if you have someone playing that Tatyova deck who's just ramping like crazy, you put this down and then they just can't play lands, right? Because they're likely going to have more lands than anyone, right? Now, they can sacrifice a permanent to ignore that effect, right? So it's not going to completely shut them off. It's not a hate piece like a Winter Orb or a Stony Silence or something. It is just it's a slow down. I'm going to slow you down. Okay, you're playing your Tattoo deck. You want to play another land. You have to sacrifice a land before you can, right? It just slows people right down, and I like that. Next up, Life, Death. Split cards aren't played nearly enough in this format. Some of them are really good. This one's fantastic. In particular, the death part, return target creature card from your graveyard to play, you lose life be equal to its converted mana cost. This is a reanimate. This is just another reanimate. If you're playing in black and green, this is another reanimate option. Everyone uses reanimate because it's 1 mana to put a creature from your graveyard in play. This is only 2 mana. It's fantastic. And again, I don't think people know it exists. So it's just another reanimate. The green side is not bad either. Till end of turn, all lands you control are 1/1 creatures that are still lands. So that also can be useful. Next up, this is another silly one. Again, another card I cracked open in packs way back in the day, Debt of Loyalty. This is and there's a couple of these that I will go over, and I might even make a silly deck one day with all these white effects that sort of are not typical white effects. This is white gain control of a creature, which is pretty interesting, For those who don't know how it works, you have to regenerate the creature, right? So what you do is you wait. It's an instant, obviously. So you're going to, you could always just use this to save your creature if you want to save your commander and regenerate it at instant speed. But, if you want to steal someone's creature, you just wait. Like someone has an Elish Norn out and then someone casts Blasphemous Act. You respond, cast Debt of Loyalty to regenerate it, right? You basically put that regenerate shield on it. And when the creature dies and then regenerates, you gain control of it. Like the errata on the card actually says you gain control of that creature if it regenerates this way. So it has to regenerate in order for you to gain control of it. But that's not that difficult. Just wait for a board wipe, and as long as it's not a Wrath of God, right? Because you can't be regenerated. If it's anything else, you just you gain control of their best creature. It's just a neat little card that you can just throw in a game, and everyone will go, hey, what the hell? And it's a white gain control, right? And lastly, number 10. Dimensional Breach. And this card, I know people will see this and they'll think this is a card that might piss a few people off, but I look at this and I think of the Great Aurora or cards like that, or those crazy red cards that Scramble verse maybe. But I think more probably the Great Aurora is a better example, and people play that a lot in Commander. This is similar, and again, I when you're talking about evening out the playing field, this is it, right? So it's 7 mana, so obviously you're going to play it late in the game. You're going to exile all permanents, lands, everything, okay? So for starters, whoever's got tokens, they're screwed, right? For as long as any of those cards remain exiled, so everyone's permanents are exiled. At the beginning of that player's upkeep, that player returns one of the exiled cards they own to the battlefield. So you get to pick of all the cards that you have exiled, you on your upkeep you return one to play. Now likely you'll return a land to play, I guess, so you can cast stuff. I don't know. You might not though. You might return your Elishnorn to play, right? So you have a big creature. I don't know. But it makes the game. I just think this is so interesting. If you're sitting there, especially if you have one guy that's way ahead, because now he has to basically, it brings him down to everyone's level. I mean, if he has a Vorinclex in exile, he can immediately bring the Vorinclex back, I guess. But it still is going to slow him down quite a bit. I just think it's a really interesting card that it really is going to throw a wrench into the games. It almost creates a new game. It's like it almost resets the game in the way that, Sway of the Stars does, which is banned. It's just I would love to see this go off. I'm going to throw it in a deck just because I would love to see it go off in a game and see how people react. I mean, everyone knows when the Scrambleverse or the Great Aurora, those cards get played. A lot of people, they love it. Some people don't. This will slow the game down a lot too. It's a lot like Dampening Engine, where it's going to slow the game down if one guy's going absolutely crazy. This is what white does. For all those people talking about, white needs more card draw and white needs more this and that. This is what white has done since the beginning. Those balance type effects. Unfortunately, balance. I'm going on a bit of a rant here, but I think it's necessary. Balance and Squandered Resources, two cards that are banned in the format. I mean, that's why white isn't as good in Commander, because that's what white does. That's white's card advantage. White's card advantage is you're going to play 12 lands. I'm going to make you sacrifice down to 4 because that's all I have, right? Rather than ramping, it's like reverse ramp. It brings everyone back down to their level. That is what white has done since the beginning of the inception of the game. And that ability has sort of been taken away from it. That's why white isn't as powerful in the format. This is a great card that sort of does that. It costs 7, so it's not like you're going to be screwing people over early in the game. I think it just would make for a fun and interesting way to close out a game. So yeah, that's it for today. That's 10 cards that I think you should try out in your Commander decks. Thanks for tuning in.